Good morning. I would like to welcome anyone who's watching live this morning. This is my very first live anything, so I ask that if there's any audio issues or anything like that, please send that in as a text or a chat. I do have someone here working with me, my daughter. She's going to be on the other side of the camera, and she's going to be monitoring any questions, any feedback. So do send those along, and do let me know who's here. This way we can do a shout out and say hello. With this being one of my very first times, and as well as I'm the technical person, I ask that you be patient with me. Each time we do this, we're going to get a little bit better and just keep building on our successes. So today is the first of what we're going to be calling in real time Saturdays. And what we're going to be doing is alterations, but I want you to watch them in real time. I know there are many of my alteration videos you will see online, and yes, they are done in real time, but I just really want you to get the feel that each of these alterations that I am teaching can be done within a very reasonable time frame. We're going to be doing the repeatable steps. And another benefit of having an event like today, when I have a video on my website, let's say a waistband video. Waistbands can be made in hundreds of different manners. I find some of my students then will see a waistband that comes across their work table and they get stopped thinking, oh, this waistband is not made in the same fashion as the waistband in the video. There are a lot of variations in clothing. So yes, you will have to address those differences, but I want you to not see them as giant hurdles. They're just slight variations, and a lot of the techniques that I teach on one item, like we're going to be learning today on a trench coat, basically a trench coat is like a lined skirt with the lining attached at a vent. So you're going to be hemming a skirt using these same steps. So I just want you to kind of take out all the complexity you might have in your mind and see things in a very simplistic way. So let's get started. This is our trench coat that we will be shortening. Has a lining. The lining is loose, so that just means that it's open at the base, held together at a couple of points with these little stays here. We will be replacing those. Now another note I want you to be aware of. Right now you're seeing me with the Facebook Live, and we are a bit limited as to how close you can see the detail. We do have another camera that is working over here, which will give closer footage of each of the things we're doing. And with that added footage will be available to members. So it's another reason to become a member from the Jackson Sewing. Anyone will be able to see the live events, whether today or it's going to be uploaded onto YouTube. But getting the clear, really close-up footage is going to be available to members only. So what we're going to do is start with this coat. We're going to assume it doesn't really belong to anybody. So we're going to just make up an amount that we're going to be shortening. And traditional trench coats are long. If you're hemming a trench coat 4 or 5 inches, you do not need to remove any of the original hem while you're doing your prep. But I want us to do this trench coat so that we are doing the max that you would have to do. So our finished hem will be running into the trench coat hem so that we can still go through all the steps as well of removing the original hem. So let's pick a number. We are going to hem this trench coat, let's say 2 inches. That way we can clearly see our markings, but also we can, we're going to have to remove this original hem. So some elements of this trench coat too. Along the front, we do have top stitching. This is on the inside and our lining. Our lining is top stitched. It's a 1-inch top stitch, and it is joined here with the facing. We do have some pleating detail at the back of the coat. This is our center back. There is pleating detail, and the pleats are stitched for Christmas in the center. So we will be addressing those as we're doing this prep work. The hem is flipped up and it is blind stitched. And yeah, serged and blind stitched. Now, where I will be doing this slightly different, this particular coat has only a 1-inch facing on the hem. I'm going to be doing 2 inches. My reason being, I just like a heavier hem. When you have a heavier facing inside, it's going to pull your coat down and give it a bit more body, as well as my interfacing that we will be putting in here and replacing is 2 inches. So it just makes things a little easier for us. So we will be making a nice 2-inch facing in our hem. I want to do this as if it's come across my work table, and we want to get this done. An alteration like this, I would say you definitely want to have it done in an hour. When you look at the pricing, I would charge $45 to hem a jacket like this. It's like 2 straight skirts, so 20 and 20, and at $45. I like to work at a minimum of $40 an hour. If I'm working in a retail place that we have to have overhead, then we're going to have probably at least a $60 an hour rate that we're working at. So we just want to keep that in mind, that even at $45 an hour for this alteration, I would want to be able to get this done preferably 45 minutes, but no more than an hour. We're going to be starting our hemming, so what we do is we're going to mark with our wax chalk first, 2 inches. So I'm going to start on the outside of my coat, and from the finished hem, I'm going to put some marks, 2 inches. This particular coat has a slightly shaped hem. That's why I'm going to put marks at various intervals and not just one continuous straight line. 2 inches I'm marking from the finished hem. And you'll notice that I haven't actually taken out. I know we are going to be removing the original hem, but I haven't taken anything out yet. I am getting my markings first. So, an added bonus with this coat, just because we're picking our hem here, 2 inches up, since my interfacing is 2 inches, I don't have to actually mark my cut line, because my finished hem here, or the old hem, is actually going to be my cut line. I hope if you didn't understand that, just let me know. But just because we're hemming at 2 inches, and that's just because we're making up a hem amount for this video. So, I always feel, why do something that doesn't need to be done? All right, so we're continuing to do our 2-inch marks. And this is where the new hem is. And I am not going to mark this actually all the way. Yeah, I will. I will mark this, because we will be pressing this up ahead of time. All right, so I've got my 2 inches here. And if this was a hem that we were doing up higher, this is where I also would mark where my actual cut line is going to be. But I don't need to because I'm going to be cutting on their old hem. I'm going to turn to the facings, the left and the right facing, right here. Same thing. I'm going to mark 2 inches up from the finished hem of the facing and 2 inches also at the center. That's where my buttons are. And the reason I mark 2 inches from this point here to there is because it is at a little bit shorter. When your facing is flipped in, we do not want to see the facing showing from the outside. So I make sure that when I do my markings, it's 2 inches from here and 2 inches from there. It'll go on a very slight angle. All right. To connect that there. While I'm still on this side, our lining is generally 1 inch shorter than your finished hem. Here, it's actually 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to go with the 1 inch. The reason why they have the 5/8 is because they only have a 1 inch hem facing, and it looks better because then you can see like this. You're not seeing any of the inside of the coat. We don't want the hem, we don't want to see any of this. So that's why they've only have a 5/8. Because I'm putting in a 2 inch facing in my hem, I can still do my 1 inch because the facing will be wide enough so none of the inside of the coat will show. I hope all this makes sense at some point. It all makes sense in here, so sometimes I find it doesn't always make sense as it comes out. So what I'm marking now, this is the chalk mark, the finished hem on the outside of the coat. I'm going to do a mark 1 inch from there on the lining, and that will be my new lining hem. I'm not going to continue marking that quite yet. I'm going to go over to my other facing. Mark 2 inches up, 2 inches there. Connect that. I've already sharpened my chalk, therefore I have a nice crisp line. And this is my finished outer hem, and 1 inch up will be where my lining, my new lining hem. The lining is a 1 inch top stitch, so basically 2 inches in the facing turned under 1 inch, 1 inch. Let's see. Rose, can you see if does anyone ask a question or anything?
No, but we have Jack Feeney from Knoxville, Tennessee, and Susan from York, UK.
Oh, welcome Jack and Susan. Good to see you. Like I said, if you have any questions, do put them in the comments. I know right now my daughter, she's watching on her phone and she can see in the comments. There is a chat function, but it's not set up to the laptop right now. So if you do have a question, just put it into the comments and Rose will be able to see it. So, and I do appreciate any feedback as we're going along. This way, like I said, each time we do one, we're going to make it a little bit better and improve our quality. So while I'm on this side now, I am going to continue marking my lining line, and we are going to cut 2 inches below our finished lining line. So I'm going to do that right now on the lining from the finished lining, the old lining. Actually, no. So take that back. So what I'm doing now is I am taking to mark this mark here, our new lining. I'm going to measure from the old lining and measure up and see where that mark is. It should be 3 inches, and it is. Not all the time it is. But, so our new lining hemline is 3 inches from the old, so I'm gonna measure up 3 inches. And then I'll put a mark 2 inches below that, that's where we're actually gonna cut. 3 inches up is the new lining hemline. I am going to connect my lining chalk marks because this is one time too where I will always press in. Speaking of pressing, let me put my iron on. So it's cooking. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to continue marking my lining. 3 inches up is the new hem and 2 inches below will be where I'm cutting. 3 inches up, 2 inches down. Inches. I might as well say it out loud because I say it in my head all the time. Even when I'm here alone, this is how I entertain myself. All right. I'm curious, Jack and Susan, do either of you do alterations for clients? And if so, do you specialize in anything particular, like menswear, ladies wear, a little bit of everything? If you don't mind sharing that information, it'd be interesting to learn about. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out our original hem so that we can now do our cutting. And this, our facing on the inside at the front just has like a swing tack. So I'm just going to cut that. We will replace it later. I do want to keep our swing tacks that were included. They were already made, and they are long enough that I'm actually going to I'm cutting it from the lining. I'm not actually undoing that lining stitching. If it was shorter, I would, but. And then undo our other swing tack here. So now we're going to start doing some deconstruction. I follow a lot of alteration Facebook groups, and I'm kind of surprised sometimes when people think that they have to take apart like a whole garment just to do something, and the goal is to take apart what we need without necessarily taking apart anything that we don't need. Okay, let's start at where our lining is joined to our facing. Our lining, new lining is going to be right here. We only want to separate up to no more than 2 inches past that point. So I'm going to release the lining using my handy dandy razor blade. I wanted to point out too here, the original hem here, they just kind of flipped it in and the lining is just tacked here. Personally, I don't like that finish. This to me should be more clean, and we may do that when we replace that. Yeah, it's just that it's not bad, but it just doesn't look as clean. It looks like it's kind of a second thought here. The way that this is just kind of flipped open here. Don't want to give ourselves much more extra work, but But I'm going to show you how to do this. I might as well make sure we're showing the right way. So this is our new hem line for the lining. So I've only taken up, released the lining. That's about 2.5 inches, but we don't want to do any more than that. On that same facing, we have 2 rows of top stitching. This is where our new hem is going to be. We need to replace the top stitching. Since I'm putting in a 2-inch facing, 2 inches up, higher than that, plus a little bit for ease. You never want to be really working in a tiny hole, and just open up things up enough so that you can easily work when you are doing something. When we flip our facing in, it's going to have to get caught at least 2 inches up, and then get that all replaced. So with that in mind, I'm going to release this top stitching up to that mark there, which it's looking like now. That's, get my ruler from the original hem. It's actually 3 inches above the new hem. So I'm going to use my razor blade. There we go. I put tension on both sides. But when I'm on the inside, I'm definitely making sure that I'm aimed towards the facing more so than the outer material. There we go. That's good. And then there's a second row. This one I'm definitely making sure my razor blade is on the facing side. If you cut a hole, and once in a while you do, very rarely, but if you do, you want it to have on the least conspicuous side. I have actually I've posted a couple of videos on a Alterations site once, and in the video, of course, I'm using the razor blade, and I got almost some, like, people weren't happy that I used the razor blade. They're commenting how, you know, oh, she can cut something. The chances of me cutting something do not outweigh the speed that this takes. It's not worth it for me to use a seam ripper. I've just never used one. I've always used the razor blade. So for me, it just works for me. All in all, it doesn't matter what you use, as long as it's not taking you any longer. That's the whole bottom line. If it's taking you longer to do something because you're not using the proper tool, then you need to use a different tool. Separating the lining from the other side now. Extra tacking here. There we go. There we go. And top stitching on the facing this side. There we go. This is definitely one of those jobs that you almost feel like you're spending a lot of time at the prep table. When you actually go to sit and sew, you'll be there for like half the time that you're going to be up here. I'm going to remove the original hem, and it is actually a blind stitch. Before I do that, I just saw something. I mentioned that the back has pleats, like as a detail, and after the hem is in, They actually do a little bit of a top stitching to pinch that, to give that nice crisp pleat. I have to undo that little bit of top stitching first. And this happens all the time. I put my blade down and now here. All right. This is what happens all the time with me. I will find that. One thing you're going to find is this is just reality. This is how this actually works. I don't aim to be perfect and polished. I aim to teach you the way things are. I'm going to release the tacking at those back details. And these are some details you're going to see on some skirts and dresses. This same layout, the way that this is constructed, is virtually the same as a lined skirt, especially a pencil skirt that has lining and it's got a pleat. Do we have any comments or anything, Rose?
Yes, from when you asked if they did any alterations,
Yeah.
Jack said he is a newbie to alterations, and Susan did for a long time, had a 3-year sabbatical, but considering restarting and specializing in bridal.
Okay, great. That's great to hear.
Jack also said, this is advanced for my level, but also very informative. The advice and techniques alone are worth watching to build a good foundation.
Yeah, good. Great to hear. And you know, people consider alterations difficult. Once again, I read so many, I'm on a lot of forums that I'm watching. And my theory is this. I kind of compare it to somebody who is arranging flowers. I love a good floral arrangement. I personally cannot do it. It's just not my thing. But there are people who you can throw a bunch of flowers on a table and they just instinctively know what to do because they've been taught how to do it. There is a way, and that's exactly what we're doing here, is I'm teaching you the steps. It's not that it's difficult, you just don't know how to do it yet. So I want you to always have that in your mind. It's not that it's difficult. Once you know how to use a sewing machine, the rest is just which seam are you sewing. And this is what I'm going to be teaching. Which seam you're sewing. Take out of your mind that it's advanced. Some bridal wear can be more advanced, and I don't like having that terminology, because then it puts almost like a barrier in your mind. So just think of everything as it's just something you don't know how to do yet. And this is what we're going to be doing. We're teaching you the steps, and keep in mind that the steps I'm showing you now are similar steps that I've put in a video. And every coat that comes across the table, I'm going to be doing the exact same steps. This way it takes out any guesswork for us. So let's focus back on our coat. Now that I've got all that tacking done, we're taking out the original hem, and it is blind stitch, so I'm going to find my one little string, and the string stopped at where they had that top stitching, but we're going to undo this. And keep in mind, if you have a coat or something that you're shortening it enough that you're not hitting the original hem, then you don't even have to do this step. You're just going to mark your cut line and cut on that line. There we go. This is the other swing tack they had caught into their hem. I'm just going to get that last little one out. That over there. If for some reason I misplaced my swing tack, especially, this is rare that this is the first time I've ever seen them where they've actually made them in fabric. Most of the time they're done with just a loop fashion, and it's almost like I crochet it with my fingers almost. And otherwise, yeah, this is just those ones are fancier, I guess. Let's see. Now, just so you know, here in London, Ontario, I have a studio here. I have tons of space and lots of machinery. So I have somebody coming in at some point who's going to be using some of my sewing space. She is a local design student, so I'm not sure if that's her or someone else. Oh, it's another individual who actually rents space from me, so. Okay.
They're wondering if they can zoom in.
If I can zoom in, can see what I can do. Right now, like I said, I'm just removing the blind stitchings. That blind stitch didn't come out in one long continuous piece like it normally would. All right, so I'm going to remove this other swing tack. And I've decided I'm not going to do anything different than how they have joined their lining here. When we do put this piece back, if anything, I might tuck the corner in before we flip our other piece up, just so it looks a little cleaner than having this raw edge just kind of lying around there. All right. Let's see. That's still caught into my top stitching from there. There you go. Oh, it's got something that's going to be opposite. There we go. All right. So now that we have our original hem out, I am going to cut on their old hemline because that's my 2 inches below our new hem. I want to make sure my lining is out of the way. And do keep in mind that for a replay, there is another camera up here that is actually getting a little bit closer, and this footage will be available to members. My individual who helps me with my video will be incorporating that into the members section so that you'll be able to have a better view of what I'm doing. Scissors, and I'm going to cut right along up there. Just double checking. Yeah, just double checking that my interfacing was 2 inches. I'm not bothering to press this out. That's just an extra step I don't need. I'm just cutting on the coat's original hemline. No sense in doing extra steps. Also, if I were to press, I would risk pressing out my chalk lines I just put in it, and that would be kind of redundant. the garbage. And this edge is going to be serged, cleaned up with a serging. Now I'm going to switch to my lining, and we have our finished mark, and we are cutting on on their top stitch. Just above their top stitch is where we will be cutting off our excess. Cut there. I usually have my bigger scissors out. I'm not sure where they're at. You don't need giant scissors, but sometimes these ones are a little too small. They're better for precise cutting. All right. Into the garbage. And while we're still up here, what we're going to do is we're going to press in our lining hem. And as we do this, we're going to press it up on the chalk line we just put in. This is where also I like using my padded, I have both a padded table as well as a padded iron board here. And this hem is slightly shaped, so I have to kind of just go along my line. So this is going right on my chalk line. And in here to hold it for me. It's a fidgety hem. Why I say that is it's because it's a little bit wider, has a slight A shape at the bottom. It is a little bit wider at this point that's getting flipped up. Let's see if I can show that to you. So when I fold up on my line, this area is kind of sticking out because of the fact that it's a slight taper. But it's not a big deal. My main concern is I want my seams lined up. So when I do flip under 1 inch and 1 inch at the side seam, I want it to be lined right up there for sure. This is another one of those times when it's not really about getting out a ruler, it's just that it looks parallel. So I have at my seam flipped under 1 inch, pinned it, and I want it to look parallel visually, and I'm going to press that into place. Nice. See if I can flip that up so you can see that a little bit better. So here, this is a nice visual and nice and parallel. Now to the next seam, 1 inch, 1 inch. I don't even normally pin it into place, but because of the shaped hem, I want to make sure it's going to stay in. And because you're watching, of course, I have to do things a little different sometimes. I want it to look good. Parallel, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to do a press. Go to the next side. Same thing. There we go. 1 inch, 1 inch. Looks good. little wonky here. Now where this area is getting a little frustrating for me here is this particular piece is not cut the same grain line as this piece of the other ones. I could tell even when I was flipping it around that something just seemed a little off with that. So what I'm going to do to test that first is I'm going to check and see where that line falls. Sometimes what I say and what I just want to make sure if there's an issue with the way it's cut, if it was too long or something, because it's just not flipping under as cleanly as it should be at that point. So I'm going to double check the length just to make sure that it wasn't too long at the first place, that it's falling where I need. All right. There, right there. Wash it there. And so what I'm doing is I have the underarm seam of the lining and the underarm seam of the coat together. And bringing this down, my finished hem of my lining should be 1 inch from the hem of my coat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check that. This is my finished hem here of the coat. Finished hem of the lining is there. 2 inches below. Okay. There. So I'm just kind of double checking to see that extra little flare is actually at the very back where the pleat is. So with that pleating, they have a little extra material, and that's what's throwing me off when I'm trying to flip this under. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from back for my lining. I'm actually going to start from the other side and work my way to the middle and see how that goes, because it is that middle area that seems a little, or just it seems like it's going here and then it's going whoop and then there. I'm going to lay that down so you can kind of see what I'm looking at. Hopefully you can see that. I'll move that over. I'll try not to flip things around too much. I'll see. There we go. All right. I have the lining that we cut here. It's good. And all of a sudden it kind of goes like here and then down to here. And then it's this little wonky area that was throwing me off. So I'm going to repress that a little, straighten it, just straighten that out, and then get back on track. And that's about all we have to do. Do not let something like this deter you or make you feel like, oh my God, there's a problem. Never assume that a garment that came from a manufacturer is perfect. That's probably the issue, was the fact that when we cut this to their old hem, I did go along their original line, there was an issue in the hem in the first place. So what I'm going to do, smooth that out. There. I am going to just connect this point to this point here. There we go. There was like a little whoop sitting there in the first place. You can see, I can hold that up like that. You can see where I put that chalk mark. Just going to take my scissors, trim that up. And now we are back in business. That's perfect. I'm just going to continue doing my pressing, and that will press in. Raise that. All right. So let's go this here. We're at the next seam. 1 inch, fold it up 1 inch, 1 inch. I am going to put my pin in there, hold that. And now that's falling in much nicer from one seam to the other. And do remember, this is just, we're just press basting, kind of pressing in the hem. This is not our good stitching, of course. There, that turned out nicely. Let's get to this one. Yes, now it's going in nicely. 1 inch, 1 inch. Like that. Nice and parallel. And the last of our lining here. 1 inch, 1 inch. Now that's ready to be stitched in. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to press our interfacing back into the bottoms of our coat here. And you will notice that the inside of our coat, the whole front and our side panels already have interfacing, so I'm not going to put our interfacing for our hem in there, only in the areas that do not have an interfacing in it. It's not often that the whole panels are interfaced like this, but if they are, then I don't have to add extra interfacing for my hem. I'm just going to do it in the areas that aren't interfaced, and making it easy because I've decided to use a 2 inch. Is it easier if I put it on top of my press board, or do you find it easier to see if I keep it on the table? Can you let me know? Not sure. I'm asking the viewers, if I put my work on the table, is it easier to see than if I put it on my the press board? I'm thinking it might be easier if I leave it on my table. Yes, I'll leave it for now because I can see in my camera. All right. This is my 2 inch fusible interfacing woven. I'm going to just line this up with my raw edge. And I'm not concerned that it's not really smooth right here because I was cutting pretty quickly with my scissors. That's going to get all serged anyways into a nice clean hem. Out over to my seam. I'm actually going to tuck this under my seam. Use that interface. Skip over to the next piece that has no interfacing. Bottom down. Interfacing, the seam. What I'm going to do before I go to the sewing machine, that's going to be our next step, I am going to press up the hem on the outer material. So it's already pressed into place for me. We will be cleaning up some of the stitching from our top stitching. but I will do that as I get to the machine. We want to make sure there's no old stitches that are going to get caught into our new work. I'm going to be starting on one of my facings, folding it on my new hemline, which is 2 inches from the old hemline. Just pressing along that. Yes.
Someone asked, the interfacing is to create structure for the stitching.
Yes, and it just helps hold it gives structure for where the finished hem is. Generally, a hem, whether it's on a sleeve, will have interfacing, as well as jackets. It just helps the garment to fall into place and hold. It gives it extra body too, especially for a coat like this. It adds a little extra weight. But when I flip this under, right along my interfacing here, the interfacing is going to be on the inside, and then it's going to give it a nice crisp line. It's in the facing, so there's a nice crisp line. It helps give it body. Press, hold it in place. There we go. What's always most important is that visually, when you or someone's looking at the work you've done, this area, that it looks parallel. That's a nice clean line. Right now, I still haven't done my serging, so it's a little, but when it's all said and done, on the inside, we just want a nice, clean, parallel line. We don't want it looking wavy. So if I'm using my chalk lines as a guide, and it should be fairly straight, but if one looks like, well, I'm going to have to move this up or down a little, as long as it's parallel in the end, that's all that matters. I don't want you to get caught up on formalities and rules and things like that. You just need good quality work when it's done. All right, we are done at this area. We're going to go to the serger. We're going to switch out our threads. I did leave that for us to do, so I'm going to switch my camera around. We're going to serge the bottom. Once the bottom is serged, we are going to, I do have to pull out my blind stitcher, so you'll get to see that today too. We'll get the hem blind stitched in, but we'll do some of our sewing machine. We do go to the straight stitch to do the lining. Yeah, all our work is now going to be at the workstation over here. We will come back and do a final press in the end, but right now we're moving from here to the actual sewing station, which is like a few feet over. Give me just a couple of minutes for me to shift my camera over, and we'll continue over there. So we're at my sewing station. I have my industrial machine here, and we will, once I actually do the sewing, I'll move my camera a little closer for that as well. And I have my serger here, and then I'll be pulling out my blind stitcher. So let's get started and begin at the beginning. See, what I'll do is I'll switch this around. I'm going to bring my serger over for us here. So what I have is the serger's already set up. I do have black in here, and instead of replacing all my colors, I'm going to replace my middle thread, which will be the top thread when the serger is serging. I'm going to do that. I like showing this option because not everybody has a thread of every color. I do need my close-up glasses for this, and I'll get them. Okay. So all I need to do now is pull my middle thread through, loosen my tensions. I'm going to grab that. There we go. It's pulled through already. Just double checking that didn't miss something here, so I'm going to pop that back in. There. All right. I do have a thread here. I'm going to take that out. Extra needle thread in there. Oh, I didn't plug the wrong way. Nope. Did I plug the wrong way? Got that there. Don't we love sergers here? 1, 2, 3. It's those two there, and then my needle thread here. Okay, and then this one can go. I don't need that one. All right, here we go. Garbage. All right, going to do a quick test, make sure the stitches are working okay. Our tension's back. There we go. I like having my workstation set up so that I don't have to go too far from one machine to the other. That's why I've set it up this way. Going to serge the full bottom of the outer of the coat. Any seams that are pressed open, especially where they had top stitching, make sure it's pressed open. And this is where I want to make sure that none of the old top stitch threads are getting caught into my new seam. Good. All we really need that machine for. So let's put that out of the way. And as you see, we now have a nice, clean, serged bottom. I'm going to pick out some of this top stitching that we originally took out now. Get that cleaned up, because we will be replacing that as well. but we're going to, trying to think of when that. There we go. Just cleaning it up. Over to our other facing, same thing. Let's get that cleaned up. Do you have any easy tips or tricks on how to get out threads that are in the fabric? It'd be nice if there was like a nice little vacuum that would just suck those out for us automatically. I don't think there is, but if there was, I would certainly buy one. There. Going to switch out. Yeah. I'm just going to put my appropriate colored thread into the straight stitch machine now. Okay. All right. I have changed my bobbin. We are going to just wind a thread. Alterations is one of those traits where you're always skipping from one color to another. And because garments have kind of different colors, you may never have the right one with all the threads you've got. It's still never going to be the right color. Depending on what I'm working on too, I don't necessarily need to wind a full bobbin, just what I need for my project. I'm curious, do you, anyone who's watching, Jerry, do you have industrial machines? Do you use domestic machines? Is a domestic industrial machine something you have in your sights for the future? What are your thoughts? I know myself, once I've kind of gone industrial, I don't want to go backwards. If I use a domestic machine, I find it feels like it's going too slow. But I also like the control I have with my industrial, especially when working with heavier items. There we go. Bring up our bottom thread.
Jack says domestic now.
Domestic, okay. And we always have to start somewhere. A domestic machine, as long as it holds your material and works, that's all that matters. And as nice as what an industrial is, all it does is straight stitching, frontwards and backwards. Most industrials, they don't have any other features, so if you need to do any zigzagging, you're still going to need a domestic machine. It is not the end-all, be-all. My next step is I'm going to be putting my hem in my lining. So it's already pressed into place, but even with the press into place, my main concern is I just want to make sure that visually it looks like it's the 1 inch all the way down. I've got just a small stitch, medium to small. Get this onto here, get it started. As you can see, I don't have other pins in here. I don't do a lot of pinning. Whenever we're doing a long seam, this is where it's important to, I always find putting a little bit of tension in front and behind your sewing to get that nice smooth line. Now I'm at my first pin, just take that out. The time we actually are going to spend at the machine will be very minimal now that we've got all our other prep work done. I do have a little magnet off to the side where I'm putting my pins. Now we have a nice top stitched hem in the bottom. And our goal also is that it's always parallel in 1 inch. We are going to give that a good press after, once we get back to the machine, up to the press station I mean. Let's trim out some of these threads that we have building up here. Clean up. Now I'm thinking. Okay. Next, we're going to have to bring out our blind stitch to put this into place. So let me pull that out. If I was real smart, I would have had that all set up. I'm curious as well, who here has a blind stitch machine? And if you don't, do you hand sew? Yeah, hems in. If you need like a blind stitched hem. I used to have a full machine like my industrial blind stitch. This I love because it's all steel components, but it's definitely portable and it's so much easier to get around. And for this particular tutorial, I am going to leave my black in because I want you to see when I get the blind stitching in, the area that we're working on. Okay. And this way you can see where my stitching will be located at. All right. Got that set up, make sure it's not twisted, anything. Around. It is. That's what that is. My it got twisted around from being in place, so I'm going to untwist that puzzle. Blind stitch thread is a nylon. And if anyone's ever used like fishing line, you know that it can be not the easiest to tie knots and to keep one straight. Hardest part of my day anymore is figuring out whether I need my glasses or not to see a needle threaded. when I was 21 and I worked for the tailor, he used to always have me come in and do all his threading. And now I know why. Start at 1 inch. And I'll see if I can get this as best as I can right now. So we're going to put this under the blind stitch machine. Put this in place. I'll do a few stitches and we'll see how it's looking. It'll be easier for you to see as the fact that I'm going to be using the black thread. I do a few stitches. I'm going to go behind, take a look, make sure it's catching, it's not too tight. The fact that I'm using black thread, I can clearly see that there's picks on this other side. It's actually showing too much. I'm going to lessen the depth. When I do the lessen, it just makes the needle go under a little less. I'm going to take that out, the original stitching that I just put in, and redo it with a little less showing. If I'm using the proper color thread, when that matches the garment, it's less noticeable. Check again. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the raw edge of my material where the serging is, and on my blind stitch there's like a guide, and that serged edge is running along the guide.
Mom, you were asked, should our second machine be a blind stitch or serger?
Okay, I would say a serger, because depending on the work you do, you may not have as many blind hems, but also your domestic machine does have a blind stitch option. It's not as perfect, but it does work.
Yeah, they also added, like before, that I'm trying the blind stitch setting and pressure foot on the machine.
Yeah. So it does work. It just takes a while, and like I said, depends on what type of sewing you're doing. When I worked for a men's clothing store, I did lots and lots of needed the blind stitcher and the serger. Oh, there's something went wrong. And but with some of the work I'm doing now, I don't seem to require to need it as much. So I would say first of all a serger, because you're always going to need that. A lot of clothing nowadays is knitwear. A lot of the knits are sewn and serged with the same machine, which is your serger. When you cut and do any work on a woven garment, you're going to need to clean up the edges, so you'll need that serger. I would always get a serger, and then when you get a chance to get a blind stitch. And that's only if you're using it. This blind stitch I purchased from Reliable Sewing Machine in Toronto, and this one here, I think it's like $3.29, which I found to be a good price. I got to figure out something's malfunctioning here, why it's busting my thread. We were going along really well. That usually happens, especially when somebody's watching. Why is that doing that? This is real life alterations. Things are going great, and all of a sudden, like that. If you choose to do anything like draperies, you're going to want something, a blind stitcher. Because I do know when I did draperies professionally, when we did things like shears, we would always have to do the blind hem. And we use that all the time for finishing our hems. Back to clothing, I find even now with some of the formal wear, when I get okay. We are going to have to do a little bit of troubleshooting here. It's going, it's catching still. I don't understand why. If it breaks again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to keep on going and we're going to pretend that it is done, but I don't know why it's still breaking on me. What I was saying was with some of the formal wear, a lot of the bridesmaid dresses now are actually made with knit fabric. The linings and the outer material are knit, and they use a cover stitch to do a lot of their hems. So they're not even using the blind stitching anymore like they used to. Or top stitch, you might have a like top stitch, but a hem like this you'll see on dress pants. You'll see it on some dress skirts and some dresses, formal wear, but you just don't see it as often as we used to. There we go. Don't know what was doing that, but okay, right here. We're going to call this good here for now. Don't want to take up much more of your time. All right. So I'll get this out of the way and I can show you what we've got accomplished with this. So why I like this particular machine too. So now that I've got it unplugged, my little knee press just comes off. I put it under the table here, flip this under, and everything goes back to where it was. So it's not taking up space on my wood space. There. For now, it's out of the way. So let's see. Show you this. We have it blind stitched. Like I said, I did use the black so you can see it. And on this side you can just see little picks. Even those picks are going to blend in. They would show less when I use the proper color, but it'll show less also after I do my pressing. At this point, I'm back at my straight stitch machine and we're going to finish off all our top stitching. So let me move my camera around. At this point, what we're going to do we're going to put our top stitching back that we removed originally, join up our lining, and we are going to replace our swing tacks. And okay, set that aside there. So the first thing I'm going to do is join up our lining. And this particular one, this particular coat, what they have done is on our facing, they've taken the face and flipped it inside. And they've done a couple of rows of stitching. And our lining is just basted to the seam that was put on the inside. So I'm going to go inside and do the same. I'm just going to lie that flat and continue that, rejoin the lining just within their seam allowance. This one I will do a lock stitch. Join up to where their lining originally started, and now my lining is rejoined on the side, on their side facing. I am going to, and see, this is once again, when I earlier mentioned, I don't like how they left that just like that. To typically how we would have addressed that is to finish this off, this would have been flipped in behind, nice clean finish. What I'm going to do to clean that up is, they do have top stitching here. I'm going to fold this under, just a nice little triangular like type corner on the inside. And from the outside, I'm going to hold that down by stitching into the original top stitching that they already had there. Once it's done, I'll show you what it looks like. All right. So I just don't like the way, I think it looks cheesy, the way it's finished off and the way it's just kind of flopping around. All right. All right. Let's see where we are. Inside of the coat, facing, this is the facing that has the buttonholes. It's folded in, there's our lining, and I just turned that in, that back, folded it in, and we stitched it down, so now it's not flipping up and over. So it looks a little cleaner, especially if anyone sees it from that angle. That area is good. Well, I'm still at this area. I'm going to replace my top stitching. This is the center front buttonholes. Make sure your stitching matches the same length that they have. I always overlap mine about 1 inch. Don't do a lot of front and back to lock it, because then it just makes it more obvious that we're stitching. Make sure everything's folded into the exact same lines that were there originally. And I'm going to just top stitch a little bit bigger into there's. And so there was 2 rows. So I'm going to do here 2. So we've got the top stitching replaced. Now I'm going to switch over to the other side facing. Do the same thing. Join up my lining. If there's any strings or any extra things hanging down, we can always clean that up as we go. Tack down my lining. Threads as we go. I'm going to clean up this edge that's flipping around that they had. So I flipped in my corner, and I'm going to just sew in their top stitching, which will hold that into place. Time to replace the top stitching on the other side, and I'll always do your top stitching from the outside of the coat, so I'm going to be starting from the bottom, moving up. We always want it to look perfect from the outside. stitch into place. And last thing at this machine, center back has our back pleat detail, and where our hem is flipped inside, this is the seam for that back pleat detail. We are going to just do a little bit of stitching, usually about 1/4 inch. We're going to flip it back on itself because this is the serge seam from that pleat. We're going to start here and do a little bit of stitching to hold that pleating detail into place. Once I sew it, I will show you. And we blend it right up to the stitching. I started here and I sewed right up and I blended it right into their seam. And on the good side, it just has a nice reinforced pleat seam. Do that for both your pleat seams at the back. And we're almost done. We're going to replace our swing tacks, and you might have noticed that I forgot to sew them into the actual hems. I don't normally have swing tacks that go into a hem, so what I might do is just do some regular string swing tacks there. So jacket. Technically, we are done at our sewing machine. What we have accomplished at this point, we have the outside hem in a blind stitch, rejoined our lining, replaced our top stitching, replaced our pleat stitching. Now we're just going to finish off with the swing tacks, then we go to the iron and give it a press, and then that's it. So let's just show the swing tacks at this point. I will show you one. For a needle, I don't like people getting caught up in needles and what types of needles are using. This is just a nice medium-sized sharp. No, it's a between. It's a sharp. A sharp is a longer needle. The longer, the betweens are smaller. You don't want anything too big or too small, just enough to work with. You're not doing a lot of fine stitching. I'm going to take my colored thread and I will do triple. Needle thread. Does anyone else who's watching dread the moment they have to thread a needle? I remember back in the day when that was nothing I even thought about, just did. Here I've got my needle threader. Especially when I've got multiple threads. Good old needle threader. Unless you have someone young to do it for you who's around, that always helps too. That's what I used to do for the tailor. There. Okay. So, started with triple thread, now I have 6 strands of thread. Clean that up, tie my knot. Okay. I'm going to put a pin in. This is where my facing's flipped into my jacket, where my lining is joined with it. Just putting a pin in to keep it close to each other. I'm going to put make a little swing tack, a string that's going to join those two together. Let's start whichever side you want. I'm going to start here on the facing side, do a little back stitch to make a knot, and this is like a little crochet with your hands trick. We take, now that I put the needle through without pulling it all the way through, this is my loop, put my hand through like this, and I'm going to grab my thread from my needle, pull it through, and then tighten up that to the base. Still got my hand, pull that through, and pull that down. And we're just going to keep doing that till we have a little chain of threads that will be approximately 3/4 of an inch long. Pulling it through, tighten it up. Already we're at like, let's show you. Already we're at like 1/2 inch. Just want to keep them as neat as possible. Yeah. I'll even show you my cheater way of doing this. This is my fancy way. It looks even fancier. This is what we'll do also on bridles to make it a little bit nicer. So we do have like a little tack now. That's our 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to finish it off, stop it by taking the needle, pulling it right through, and then that keeps it from doing the crochet thing and from coming out. Now I'm just going to, this lines up here, and I'm just going to do some back stitches now in my hem facing. What I'm going to do, and these will be attached, be available on the website. I'm also going to take some photos, still shots of some of these points, and they will have some details attached to them, which will help to bring remembrance back of what we're doing here. Just doing some back stitching to secure that. I'll show you what that looks like. Then I'll show you my cheater way too that I've done. And it's not that, it's just an easier way. Take out my pin, and you can see how these two pieces now are joined with my spring tack. All the way to the other side, do the same. I'll show you the simpler way. Same thing, I'm going to put a pin in, hold that close, pull that down. We start the same with our 3 strands that are now 6. Tie a knot. We'll start in the facing. Same thing, the needle through, we'll do a little back stitch. I'm going to now go right to my facing of the lining, of the hem. I have a string that's about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to do a little back stitch to knot that. I don't want it getting any bigger or smaller. Okay, so you can see better. So now I've got my 3/4 eighths of a string. I'm going to skip now over to here. Another back stitch. And I'm going to go back down to here. So now I have these kind of loose strings, and I don't like that they're just all in one. So I am going to take this string and just wrap it around a few times. Around them as a whole. It's always so much easier when nobody's watching. It just helps keep them contained. Do 3 or 4 times. And a couple of back stitches up here. just to make sure we're knotting that off. All right. There. And then we have another swing tack that's nicely contained. Just a different method. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go back to the iron board. We're going to iron, and this is pretty much done. First, we're going to press our lining nice and smooth. Anytime you do any sewing, we always want to give it a good press. I'm going to grab my clapper. Does anybody else use or have a clapper? Helps to pull down and smooth out. There we go. Smooth that out. This is the inside facing section. This side. Clean. This side. And we'll give the outside a nice press as well. Always looks nice once it's all pressed. And had I used the same color of thread for my blind stitching, you would hardly even have noticed those spots. Our pleat area at the back, I'm going to give a press flat first, but then we're going to press those pleats back in. You always want to return the garment in the same manner. That came. Back pleats. Back over. Same thing here. Get that nice and crisp the way it was. This is definitely where we're going to want to use our clapper. The clapper helps to press, but then also to cool the fabric. Maybe a little bit of a wrinkle in it I didn't like, so I'm going to get rid of that. There we go. Yeah. Technically, that is it. This coat is done. We did have 2 other swing tacks, which I would replace. I would replace those other 2 swing tacks that were at the center back of the coat, but I'm going to put the coat on my mannequin, and so you can see how she looks. Like I said, I will do some photo images, which will be on the website, and you will get a better view. But technically, she be done. It's definitely one of those jobs that has quite a few steps, but once again, just keep doing all the steps, all the same manner all the time, and you'll get a consistent hem. And practice. Go to the secondhand store, pick up a couple of coats, one long coat, and keep hemming it just till you get to the same routine, and you find that it's not so challenging. Your goal is to get this job done. I would say, like I said, 45 minutes would be good timing, but definitely for 1 hour. Is there any other questions or anything at this point before we finish off? We have just a couple of minutes left. Rose? No? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone who joined me today and everyone who stayed with it from the beginning to the end. I welcome any feedback. We are continually working on this. It's our first one. Next week, I'm looking forward to working on a wedding gown. So for those who do weddings, I have purchased a wedding dress from a secondhand store that was like $50. Still had tags on. My only concern with the wedding dress was you could see through it still. It was a beautiful dress, but needs an extra layer put into it, and therefore also needs some extra boning. We will be adding boning to the wedding dress. We'll see what we can get done within that 2 hours, but that's definitely what we're going to be doing next week, working with a wedding dress. And just like any other garment, wedding dresses are it's like any other item. It's just clothing. Don't get in your mind that it's any more challenging. We're going to teach you how to do all those steps and get everything taken care of. So thank you for joining me today, and look forward to doing some more like this in the future. Thank you.